You probably heard of Roman mythology countless times before. But did Rome really begin with myths? The story you're about to hear today isn't the beautiful legend we all know. This is a tale stained with blood, betrayal, and an insatiable hunger for power. Behind that heartwarming story of a wolf nursing abandoned babies lies a brutal reality, where brother murdered brother. Rome wasn't born from mythology. It was forged from ambition and treachery. Chapter 1. The Fall of Kings. Two brothers cast into the river. 8th century B.C., in the small city-state of Alba Longa on the Italian peninsula. This is where our story begins. King Numitor ruled peacefully over his people. But there was one thorn in his side, his younger brother Amulius. From childhood, Amulius had harbored a festering jealousy toward his older brother. While it was natural for the throne to pass to the firstborn, Amulius couldn't accept this fate. Night after night, he would stare at the royal throne, consumed by bitter thoughts. Why was I born second? Why am I denied this chance? As time passed, the darkness in Amulius's heart only deepened. Every wise decision Numitor made, every word of praise the people gave their king, only convinced Amulius further that he would make a better ruler. And finally, Amulius made a decision he could never take back. He would stage a coup. One fateful night, Amulius stormed the palace with soldiers loyal to his cause. Numitor never saw it coming. How could he imagine his own brother would commit such a betrayal? Before he could even resist, Numitor was driven from his throne, and Amulius crowned himself the new king. But Amulius's worries were far from over. Numitor had a daughter, Rhea Silvia. Sleep eluded Amulius. If Rhea Silvia bore children, they would be the rightful heirs to the throne. Someday, that child might grow up seeking revenge. So Amulius devised a cunning plan. He forced Rhea Silvia to become a Vestal virgin, a priestess bound to lifelong chastity. This way, she could never bear children, and his throne will be secure forever. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. One day, while Rhea Silvia was drawing water from a spring near the temple, the sky suddenly darkened and thunder began to roll. At that moment, Mars, the god of war, appeared before her. Entranced by her beauty, Mars spent one night with Rhea Silvia, and as a result, she became pregnant. When Amulius received this news, his rage was beyond description. His perfect plan was crumbling before his eyes. What made it worse was Rhea Silvia's claim that she carried the child of a god. Amulius didn't believe it for a second. She must have secretly been with someone else. He imprisoned Rhea Silvia and gave a brutal command. The moment the child was born, it must be thrown into the river to die. Months later, Rhea Silvia gave birth to twins. Both boys were healthy and beautiful. But to Amulius, they were nothing more than threats to his crown. He ordered his soldiers to take the infants to the Tiber River and drown them. 2 soldiers stood quietly in the palace courtyard, speaking in hushed tones. Do we really have to do this? It's the king's command. We have no choice. But still, but what? My heart feels heavy. They're innocent babies. Even so, orders are orders. Let's go. The soldiers placed the newborns in a basket and headed toward the Tiber River. It was a moonless, pitch-black night. Only the sound of rushing water broke the silence. When they reached the river bank, the soldiers hesitated. The babies were crying from hunger inside the basket. Do we really have to set them adrift? What choice do we have? But one soldier spoke carefully. Let's pray that the gods will save these children. They set the basket on the river with a small prayer. The basket began to drift downstream into the darkness, carried by the swift current. The cries of the two babies grew fainter and fainter. But this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a legend. Chapter 2. Children nursed by a wolf. The cold waters of the Tiber River tossed the small basket back and forth. Inside, the two babies cried continuously from cold and hunger, but in this deep night, there was no one to hear their pleas. Wah, wah. The babies' cries grew weaker and weaker. Cold and starvation were slowly claiming their tiny lives. The basket was swept along by the rapid current, drifting here and there. But as dawn broke, a miracle occurred. The basket caught on a tree root by the river bank and stopped. Grass near the water's edge helped support the basket. At that moment, a she-wolf who had come to drink from a nearby forest was there. This wolf had recently lost all her cubs to hunters and had been left alone, consumed by grief. As the wolf approached the river to drink, she heard faint crying. Whimper. The wolf pricked up her ears. The sound reminded her of her own lost cubs' cries. Cautiously, she approached the source of the sound. When the wolf discovered the two babies cry in the basket, she was initially wary. They smelled of humans. But listening to the babies' desperate cries, something stirred within her heart. The wolf circled the basket several times, assessing the situation. She instinctively understood that these small lives needed help. Her maternal instincts had awakened, transcending species. Carefully approaching the basket, the wolf examined the two babies. They were shivering from the cold and crying from hunger. Without hesitation, the wolf began to nurse them with her own milk. The babies began to suckle the wolf's warm milk. At first startled by the unfamiliar sensation, they soon instinctively began to nurse. The wolf patiently took turns feeding both babies. This continued for several days. The wolf came to this spot daily to care for the babies. When it rained, she shielded them with her body. When they were cold, she held them close, sharing her warmth. The babies grew healthier by the day. Thanks to the wolf's devoted care, they had overcome the crisis. A special bond formed between the wolf and the babies. The wolf treated these two infants as her own cubs, and the babies came to see the wolf as their mother. But after several days, limitations began to show. No matter how devoted the wolf was, human babies needed proper human care. Then one afternoon, a shepherd named Faustulus came to the riverbank with his flock. He was a simple shepherd who had long tended sheep in this region. Strange, why do the sheep keep wanting to go that way? Following his sheep, Faustulus witnessed an extraordinary sight near the riverbank. A she-wolf was caring for two human babies. What is this? Am I seeing things? Faustulus rubbed his eyes and looked again, but it was undeniably real. The wolf was actually nursing human infants. Faustulus secretly observed this scene for several days. It was truly unbelievable. But the wolf was clearly caring for the two babies as if they were her own cubs. Dear gods, is such a thing really possible? Faustulus fell into deep contemplation. Should he leave these babies alone, or should he take them himself? While the wolf was caring for them well, they were, after all, human. Finally, Faustulus made his decision. He slowly approached the wolf. The wolf initially showed wariness, but sensing Faustulus's good intentions, she didn't attack. Don't worry, friend. I don't intend to harm these children. Faustulus spoke in a gentle voice. Amazingly, the wolf seemed to have been waiting for this moment. She quietly stepped back, entrusting the babies to Faustulus. The wolf gave each baby one last lick, as if saying farewell. Then she disappeared into the deep forest. Watching her go, Faustulus felt his heart swell with emotion. What a remarkable thing. These children must have a special destiny. Faustulus took the two babies in his arms and returned home. His wife, Acca Laurentia, was initially startled, but after hearing the story from her husband, she gladly welcomed the babies. "Honey, these children seem truly special. I've never seen such beautiful babies. I know. It's hard to believe they were raised by a wolf. They're so healthy." The couple had long wished for children of their own, so they regarded these two babies as gifts from heaven. Faustulus gave the babies names. "Let's call one Romulus and the other Remus." And so, the two babies who had nearly died, cast into the river, miraculously found new life. But their destiny was far from over. The remarkable abilities and charisma they would display as they grew, and the conflicts and tragedies that would result, had not even begun. What kind of men would these two brothers grow up to become? And what fateful confrontation awaited them? The story continues. Chapter 3. Dreams of a city, brothers divided. Years passed, and Romulus and Remus grew into strong young men, raised with love by Faustulus and his wife. The two brothers were braver and wiser than anyone else. But there was something different about them, something that set them apart from ordinary people. One summer day, young men had gathered in the town square. Word had spread that a pack of wolves was attacking the sheep and terrorizing the area. Who on earth could deal with those wolves? One youth said with worry. That's when Romulus stepped forward. "I'll handle it." "Romulus, by yourself? It's too dangerous." "Not alone. Remus and I will go together." Remus stepped up beside his brother. "That's right. When we brothers take action, no wolf stand a chance." People marveled at the brothers' confidence. Indeed, they had shown extraordinary charisma from childhood. A few days later, the two brothers returned having successfully driven off the wolf pack. The people cheered, and Romulus and Remus became heroes. As such incidents repeated, followers naturally began gathering around the two brothers. But as time passed, the differences in their personalities became more pronounced. One evening, a family meeting was held at Faustulus's house. "Father, please tell us the truth." Romulus spoke with a serious expression. "What truth are you talking about? Whether we're really your sons by blood, or—" Faustulus let out a deep sigh. He had known this day would come eventually, though he hadn't expected it so soon. "You're right. You are not my blood sons." "Then who are we?" Remus asked urgently. "You are descendants of the royal house of Albalonga. Your grandfather is King Numitor, and your mother was Princess Rhea Silvia." "What?" The two brothers were shocked. They were descendants of royalty? Then why are we here? "Because Amulius cast you into the river to seize power. But miraculously you survived." After learning this truth, the brothers' hearts were heavy with conflicting emotions. For days they remained silent until Romulus finally spoke. "Remus, you know what we have to do, don't you?" "Yes, brother. We must have our revenge on Amulius." "Exactly. We have legitimate claim to the throne." But Remus was more direct in his approach. "Let's march on Albalonga right now and kill Amulius." "No, Remus. We need a plan. We can't just charge him blindly." "A plan? We don't need that. Our strength is enough." Already, the brothers' personality differences were becoming apparent. Romulus was cautious and strategic, while Remus was impulsive and bold. After months of preparation, the two brothers finally took action. They gathered young men from the surrounding areas, formed an army, and marched on Albalonga. At the gates of Alba Longa, Amulius appeared on the city walls. Who dares to invade the royal city with armed force? Romulus answered boldly from his horse. I am Romulus, and this is my brother Remus. We are the sons of Rhea Silvia and grandsons of King Numitor. Amulius's face turned pale. Impossible! You should have died. Ha! We didn't die, uncle. Remus laughed mockingly and shouted, Now it's time to pay for your crimes. The battle began, but justice was on the brothers' side, and their soldiers' morale soared to the heavens. In the end, Amulius died in battle, and Numitor was restored to his throne. In the palace, a reunion with their grandfather took place. Romulus, Remus, is it really you? Numitor embraced his two grandsons with tears in his eyes. Grandfather. The two brothers were equally moved. But Numitor's proposal was different from what they had expected. Now stay in Alba Longa and help me. Someday I will pass this throne to you. Then Romulus replied respectfully, Grandfather, we're grateful, but we have different dreams. Different dreams? Yes, we want to build our own new city. Remus agreed. We don't want to inherit something existing. We want to create something with our own hands. Numitor was disappointed, but he couldn't break his grandson's resolve. Then go with my blessing. The two brothers set out joyfully to find new territory. Their target was a region with 7 hills along the Tiber River. But as they began planning their new city, their first conflict arose. One evening, in their temporary tent, the two brothers were talking. Romulus, which hill do you think we should build the city on? Palatine Hill would be good. It's easy to defend and has high strategic value. No, Aventine Hill is much better. It's bigger and better for people to live on. Remus, defense comes first when building a city, not just livability. You're always like this, always so overly cautious, and you're always too rash. What started as a simple difference of opinion grew more serious over time. Even their followers began to take sides. When the argument continued for days, someone made a suggestion. How about we ask for the gods' will? The gods will... Yes, we could observe the flight of birds to read the omens. The two brothers agreed to settle the matter this way. Romulus would watch for signs from Palatine Hill, while Remus would do the same from Aventine Hill. Tension filled the air. The fate of their city, no, the fate of the two brothers, hung in the balance at this moment. After some time, Remus shouted, 6 eagles have appeared. His supporters cheered. But shortly after, a cry came from Romulus's side too. 12 eagles. Now the problem became complicated. Remus had seen the omen first, but Romulus had seen more eagles. Whose side had the gods truly chosen? Chapter 4. Rome built on a brother's blood. The dispute over the eagle omens escalated the conflict between the two brothers beyond control. Each side offered different interpretations. Remus's supporters were the first to raise their voices. Remus saw the omen first, so the gods chose him. That's right, the order matters. But Romulus's side fought back. No, the number is more important. 12 eagles is a stronger sign from the gods than 6. Yes, Romulus is the one truly chosen. As the conflict between the two camps intensified, Romulus and Remus stepped in directly. Remus, let's stop this now. Seeing more eagles is clearly the gods' will. Romulus asserted his authority as the elder brother. Being older doesn't always make you right. I have equal rights too. Remus's voice carried the resentment that had built up over the years. Rights? I'm the older brother, and you're the younger. That difference alone is enough. So that's how you want to play it? Didn't we both reclaim Alba Longa together? Didn't we both come this far together? As the conflict deepened, Romulus made a unilateral decision. Fine, I'm going to build a city on Palatine Hill. And he immediately began the sacred ritual of marking the city's boundaries. Using white oxen, he started plowing to mark the city's sacred boundary line. Romulus solemnly pulled the plow while chanting incantations. This line shall be the sacred boundary of our city. Anyone who crosses it shall be considered an enemy of the city. The watching crowd fell silent. This was a historic moment, the birth of a new city. But Remus's heart was filled with rage. From a distance, he watched his brother marking the boundary and muttered to himself, "He thinks he can protect a city with one line like that? Ridiculous." Remus's anger continued to grow. He too was a descendant of royalty. He too had come this far. So why should his brother monopolize everything? You call this pathetic line a city boundary? Remus mocked loudly. You think you can stop enemies with this? Romulus paused his plowing and looked at his brother. Remus, don't interfere with this ritual. Interfere? I'm just telling the truth. Then Remus acted impulsively. He leaped over the boundary line Romulus had drawn. See, a line this easy to cross. What meaning does it have? At that moment, time seemed to stop. Everyone held their breath and watched. Romulus's face turned pale and twisted with rage. Remus, do you realize what you just done? Nothing at all. I just stepped over a line. Nothing at all? Romulus's voice trembled. It was a complex mix of anger and sorrow. This isn't just a line. It's the sacred boundary of our city. You've desecrated it. Sacred? Don't make me laugh. Remus didn't back down either. If you really want to protect the city, build proper walls. Those words shattered Romulus's last thread of patience. He drew his sword from his belt. The surrounding people gasped in horror. Romulus, what are you doing? Surely not your own brother. But Romulus's eyes held cold determination. He spoke with a trembling voice. Anyone who crosses the city's boundary, even my own brother, surely you wouldn't. Remus sensed the danger too late. Will meet this fate. Romulus plunged his sword deep into Remus's chest. Ugh! Remus looked at his brother with disbelief. The sword had pierced his heart, and red blood gushed forth. Brother, you really killed me. Remus! Romulus caught his brother as he shouted, but it was already too late to undo what was done. Brother, now you'll be alone forever? Those were Remus's last words. He died in his brother's arms. Remus! Remus! Romulus shook his brother's body desperately. But Remus was already growing cold. The surrounding people were struck speechless with shock. One of the two leaders they had respected had killed the other. Romulus looked down at his brother's corpse, overwhelmed by complex emotions. Regret, sorrow, and anger all mixed together. But at the same time, he convinced himself that this had been necessary for their new city. After several minutes of silence, Romulus slowly rose. You have all witnessed this. His voice was cold and composed. This is the fate of those who break our city's laws. Even my own brother is no exception. The people could see Romulus's unwavering resolve. This was a ruthless leader who would kill even his own brother for the sake of his city. Romulus gave Remus a proper funeral. Then he named the new city Rome after himself. From this day forward, this place is Rome. It was April 21st, 753 B.C. Thus was born the great city that would one day rule the world. But its beginning was stained with a brother's blood. When night fell, Romulus stood alone on the hill, gazing at the stars. Remus, I'm sorry, but this was a path our city needed. Tears flowed from his eyes. The sorrow of losing his brother was greater than the joy of becoming king. But Romulus had to suppress these emotions and move forward. Rome began its history with violence and betrayal from the very start. Romulus had become king, but he carried a wound in his heart that would never heal. Yet with strong will, he overcame this and developed Rome. What destiny would await this city built on blood and betrayal? Chapter 5. Between Myth and Truth, the Real Rome. After Romulus killed Remus and founded Rome, his heart was never at peace. During the day, he showed the face of a strong king, but at night, his brother's final moments haunted his dreams. One deep night, as Romulus lay sleeping alone in his palace, "Brother, why did you kill me?" In his dream, Remus appeared. The sword wound was still vivid on his chest, and his eyes were filled with resentment. "Remus, I had to. You'll be alone forever, brother. I told you so." "No, it was for Rome." "Rome? It was for your own ambition." Romulus woke in a cold sweat. These nightmares repeated every single night. But he suppressed his emotions and poured all his energy into building his new city. Rome's biggest problem in its early days was population shortage. Most of the people who had followed Romulus were men, and there was a critical lack of women. One day, Romulus was meeting with his advisors. "Your Majesty, our city cannot develop like this." "What do you mean?" "We have too few women. If children aren't born." "I know." Romulus let out a deep sigh. He was well aware of how serious this problem was. "What if we try marriage alliances with other tribes?" "I've already tried that." They all refused. "Then what should we do?" Romulus fell into thought for a moment. Then he made another ruthless decision. "Let's hold a festival. A grand festival dedicated to Neptune." "A festival?" "Yes. We'll invite all the surrounding tribes. Entire families." His advisors caught on to Romulus's true intention, but none dared oppose him. A few weeks later, a magnificent festival was held. The Sabines and several other tribes attended with their families. The Romans had prepared the finest food and wine, along with spectacular games and performances. A Sabine father said to his daughter, "What a wonderful festival. I didn't know the Romans could be so hospitable." "You're right, father. The food is delicious too." But they had no idea of the Romans' real intentions. When the festival reached its peak, Romulus gave his prearranged signal. He raised his cloak high into the air. "Now!" The Roman youths who had been prepared moved as one. They began seizing the Sabine women. "Hey, what are you doing? Help me!" "Father!" The women's screams filled the festival grounds. Caught off guard by the sudden situation, the Sabine men were confused, but having come unarmed, they had no power to resist. "What is the meaning of this?" The Sabine chief shouted in rage. "Romulus, if you're going to do this, why did you invite us to the festival?" Romulus answered boldly, "It was necessary for Rome's prosperity. But don't worry, we will treat these women with respect and make them our lawful wives." "Lawful wives? This is kidnapping. It's a choice for our people's survival." The Sabines were furious, but helpless. They returned empty-handed, vowing revenge. This incident later became known as the Rape of the Sabine Women. Romulus claimed it was justified by Rome's needs, but its essence was violence. As years passed, Rome grew stronger and stronger. Romulus displayed exceptional military talent, conquering surrounding tribes or bringing them into alliance. One day, a subordinate reported to Romulus after returning victorious from war, "Your Majesty, another tribe has surrendered to us." "Good. How did you handle them?" "We eliminated all who resisted and accepted the rest as Roman citizens." "Excellent." Romulus was satisfied. For him, solutions through force were more effective than peaceful ones. But the more successful he became, the more tyrannical Romulus grew. He created the Senate, but kept all real power in his own hands. In a Senate meeting, one senator carefully offered his opinion. "Your Majesty, recent policies seem too unilateral." "Unilateral?" Romulus's gaze turned cold. "Isn't it natural for the king to make decisions?" "Of course, but the Senate's opinions too." "The Senate is merely an advisory body. I make the decisions." The senators could no longer argue back. Challenging Romulus's authority was too dangerous. As time passed, people began reinterpreting the story of Romulus and Remus. They preferred beautiful legends over harsh reality. An old bard was telling stories in the town square. Long, long ago, there were sons of Mars, the god of war. Sons of a god? Yes. They were sacred beings nursed by wolf's milk. Then why did Remus die? That was destiny. It was the will of the gods for Rome's greatness. This way, the reality of power struggles and violence gradually became wrapped in sacred destiny. Romulus became a son of God, and Remus's death was interpreted as inevitable sacrifice. But the truth was different. Rome wasn't built from mythology, but from human desire and ambition. Romulus wasn't a son of God, but a man thirsting for power. And Remus's death wasn't destiny, but the result of choice. During the 37 years of Romulus's reign, Rome grew from a small city-state into a regional power. But behind that growth lay endless warfare and conquest. Romulus's later years were even more tyrannical. He tried to deify himself and pursued absolute power. Conflicts with the Senate intensified. One day, a secret meeting was held in the Senate. "Romulus has gone too far. He's calling himself a god now. We can't let this continue. But what can we do? His power is so great. There is a way." The senators' conspiracy began. They decided to eliminate Romulus. Soon after, Romulus suddenly disappeared. Officially, it was announced that he had become a god and ascended to heaven, but in reality, he was likely assassinated by the Senate. And so ended the true story of Rome's founding. It was completely different from the beautiful legend we know. Rome didn't begin with a wolf's love, but with human greed. It was a city built not on brotherly love, but on fratricide, not on peace, but on violence. But it was precisely this ruthlessness that made Rome strong. The realism and power-oriented mindset that Romulus displayed was passed down intact to future Romans. They valued practicality and efficiency over morality or ideals. They chose victory over peace, domination over coexistence. Now you know the truth about Rome's founding. Rome didn't begin with mythology, but with blood and betrayal, and its essence was power struggle and the will to conquer from the very start. This DNA only grew stronger as Rome developed into a world empire. After Romulus, Rome was ruled by kings, followed by a republic, and finally an empire emerged. But what ran through all that history was the ruthless realism that Romulus had shown. How did such a Rome come to conquer the world? And how much blood and betrayal was there in that process? The real history of Rome has only just begun. In our next story, we'll tell you about the age of kings after Romulus and the republic that was established after driving out those kings. How exactly did Rome go about conquering the Mediterranean? that amazing story awaits you.